The rhythmic clatter of steel wheels against the subway tracks filled the nearly empty train car, a steady hum that matched the pulse in Noah Carter's ears. It was past midnight, and he was exhausted from another grueling shift at the corner store. He leaned against the window, watching the blurred city lights streak by. Noah had taken this route home hundreds of times, and tonight seemed no different. The subway was mostly empty, just a few scattered passengers too lost in their own worlds to notice each other. An elderly man dozed in the corner, a construction worker scrolled through his phone, and a couple whispered in hushed voices. But it was the girl sitting across from him that caught his attention. She looked about his age, 17, maybe 18, with pale skin and wide, fearful eyes. Her hoodie was slightly oversized, sleeves pulled over her hands, as if she were trying to disappear into the fabric. But it wasn't just her nervous demeanor that made Noah take notice. It was the way she kept glancing at the subway doors, gripping the edge of her seat as if she were ready to bolt at any moment. Noah tried to look away, but something about her sent a ripple of unease through him. His instincts told him that something wasn't right. Then she did something strange. She lifted her hands slightly and made a small, almost imperceptible motion, like she was signaling for help. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't obvious. But it was intentional. Noah's stomach tightened. Was she in danger? Or was he imagining things? The train jerked slightly as it sped toward the next stop, the fluorescent lights flickering for a brief moment. When they stabilized, Noah noticed something else. Two men standing near the doors. They weren't dressed like the usual late-night commuters. Their dark clothes blended into the dimly lit train, their expressions unreadable. But what unsettled Noah the most was their body language. One of them, a burly man with a scar running down his cheek, kept glancing toward the girl. The other, a wiry guy with a sharp jawline, subtly shifted closer whenever she moved. Noah swallowed hard. Was she trying to get away from them? His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she was just paranoid. Maybe she had a bad day. Maybe those guys weren't even looking at her. Or maybe she was in real trouble. Noah adjusted his earbuds, pretending to be focused on his music, but his eyes stayed on the girl. She kept her head down, but her fingers trembled as she clutched the strap of her backpack. Every few seconds, she darted a glance at the two men, her breath coming out in shallow, panicked bursts. Noah had seen fear before, real fear. He grew up in a rough neighborhood, had watched his older brother barely escape a gang fight, had seen desperate people do desperate things. This girl wasn't just nervous. She was terrified. And then it happened. The train slowed as it approached the next station. The girl tensed as if preparing to run. But before she could, the scarred man stepped in front of her. Noah saw the way she flinched, the way she shrank back into her seat, the way her fingers curled into fists. She was trapped. Noah's pulse quickened. This was it. He had a choice, ignore it and pretend he didn't see anything, or step in. And then, just before the doors opened, the girl's eyes met his. A silent plea. Help me. Noah didn't hesitate. He stood up. The subway doors hissed open, spilling fluorescent light onto the deserted platform. The cool night air drifted in, mixing with the sterile metallic scent of the train. A robotic voice echoed through the speakers, next stop, Marshall Avenue. Doors closing in 30 seconds. Noah's heart pounded. The girl was trapped. The scarred man stood in front of her, blocking the exit. The other man lingered near the opposite door, as if ensuring she had no way out. Their postures weren't outright aggressive, but there was something menacing about the way they hovered, like vultures circling prey. The girl didn't move. Her wide, fearful eyes darted between the men, her fingers clutching her backpack so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Noah had seen enough. He had to do something. But what? He could yell, draw attention, but the car was nearly empty and the few passengers left seemed lost in their own worlds. He could step between them, but what if they were dangerous? What if they had weapons? Every instinct screamed at him to mind his own business. To sit back down. To pretend he didn't see a thing. But when he looked at the girl again, he knew if he did nothing, she wouldn't make it out of that train. Noah took a deep breath. Then he moved. Intervention with deliberate steps, he crossed the subway car, closing the distance between them. He stopped just behind the scarred man, forcing himself to act casual as if he were just another passenger stretching his legs. Then he leaned down toward the girl. Hey, there you are, Noah said, his voice light but firm. I've been looking all over for you. The girl blinked, her breath catching in her throat. Noah gave her a barely perceptible nod, play along. For a split second, confusion flashed across her face. But then, as if some instinct took over, she nodded. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Her voice was soft, but there was a quiver underneath it. Noah smiled, shoving his hands in his pockets as if this was the most natural conversation in the world. Come on, let's go. We're getting off here. He turned to the scarred man, feigning ignorance. Sorry, man, didn't mean to interrupt. She's with me. The scarred man didn't move. His cold, piercing eyes locked onto Noah's, analyzing, calculating. The wiry man by the opposite door shifted slightly, tension thick in the air. For a moment, Noah thought he had made a terrible mistake. Then the girl stood up. I should go, she murmured, gripping the strap of her backpack. The scarred man reached out. Barely a movement, just a flicker of his hand, as if he were about to grab her wrist. Noah's muscles tensed. But the man hesitated. Maybe it was because the doors were still open, and a last-minute scuffle could draw attention. Maybe it was because Noah's sudden appearance had thrown them off. Or maybe, just maybe, the girl wasn't supposed to have an ally. Either way, Noah seized the opportunity. Come on, he said, taking a step toward the open doors. The girl followed. Noah's pulse pounded in his ears as they stepped off the train, his senses hyper-aware of every movement behind him. The doors remained open for just a few seconds longer, long enough for him to wonder if the men would follow. Then, with a final hiss, they slid shut. The train sped away, carrying the two men with it. Noah exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. But when he turned to the girl, he realized something chilling. She was still shaking. Nowhere to run. Noah hadn't planned past this moment. He had acted on impulse, driven by instinct. But now that they were alone on the dimly lit platform, he didn't know what to say. The girl hugged herself, staring down the tunnel where the train had disappeared. She looked like she wanted to cry, but she didn't. Noah shifted awkwardly. You okay? She flinched slightly at his voice, as if snapping back to reality. She looked up at him, her brown eyes filled with something between gratitude and exhaustion. Yeah, she whispered. Thanks. Noah nodded, shoving his hands into his hoodie pocket. No problem. Silence stretched between them. Now that he was up close, he noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hoodie sleeves were frayed at the edges, the scuff marks on her sneakers. This wasn't just some girl heading home late. She was running from something, or someone. The realization sent a chill down his spine. He cleared his throat. Those guys, they were following you, weren't they? She hesitated, then nodded. Who were they? Her lips parted as if she wanted to answer, but then she shut her mouth. Noah sighed. Okay, different question. Do you have somewhere safe to go? She hesitated longer this time. Then, finally, she shook her head. Noah ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. All right. Well, I don't know what's going on, but standing around here probably isn't the best idea. He glanced around the nearly empty platform. The city above was quiet at this hour, and that made it more dangerous. The girl swallowed hard, gripping the straps of her backpack. She was debating something, fighting an internal battle he couldn't see. Then, just as he was about to suggest finding a nearby cafe or police station, she whispered, I don't want to put you in danger. Noah blinked. Ha! She met his gaze, her voice barely above her breath. If they see you with me again, they won't just walk away next time. Noah's skin prickled. This wasn't just a case of a girl being followed by creeps. This was something bigger, and he had just inserted himself into it. But despite the warning in her voice, despite the unease gnawing at his gut, he couldn't just leave her here. Look, Noah said, running a hand through his hair. I don't know what's happening, and I won't ask if you don't want to tell me. But if you need help, I can at least make sure you're safe for the night. She hesitated. Then, finally, she nodded. Noah exhaled. All right, let's get out of here. But as they turned to leave the platform, Noah's phone buzzed in his pocket. He let go of her wrist, glancing around. No suspicious figures. No blacked-out vans. But the uneasy feeling in his gut wouldn't go away. Where are we going? She asked. Noah exhaled sharply. Good question. His apartment? No way. If these guys could text him out of nowhere, they could track him down. The police? Maybe. But if she was this scared, something told him that going to the cops wasn't an option. They needed somewhere safe. Neutral territory. Then it hit him. There's a diner a few blocks from here, he said. It's open all night. Bright lights, people around, it's safer than standing here. She hesitated but then nodded. Okay. They started walking. Fast. Noah's brain raced. Who were those guys? Why was she running? And how deep was he in this now? But he knew one thing for sure, this wasn't some random incident. This was planned. And if they didn't figure out their next move, they wouldn't have much time left. The girl with no name. They reached the diner in under 10 minutes. The bright neon sign buzzed overhead, casting a pinkish glow on the sidewalk. Inside, a few customers lingered, a truck driver sipping coffee, an elderly woman flipping through a newspaper, and a pair of night shift workers in quiet conversation. Safe enough. Noah led the girl to a booth near the back, far from the windows but still in sight of the entrance. A waitress, middle-aged, tired-looking, came over and poured them 2 glasses of water without asking. "What can I get you?" she asked. Noah glanced at the girl. She shook her head. "Just fries," he said. "And coffee." The waitress nodded and walked away. Now, with a moment to breathe, Noah turned to the girl. "Okay," he said, leaning forward. "Who are you?" She looked down at her hands. She hesitated. "I can't tell you my real name." Noah frowned. "Then what do I call you?" She bit her lip. Then, after a pause, she whispered, "Lena." Noah wasn't sure if it was her real name or something she made up on the spot. But right now, it didn't matter. "All right, Lena," he said. "Who were those guys?" She exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. "Bad people." Noah sighed. "Yeah, I got that much." Lena glanced around the diner as if making sure no one was listening. Then, in a voice so soft he almost didn't hear it, she said, "They work for someone." "Someone who takes people." Noah stiffened. "Takes people." She swallowed hard. "Human trafficking. Kidnapping. People who won't be missed." The air between them went still. Noah felt a cold chill crawl down his spine. He had thought maybe she was running from an abusive boyfriend, maybe gang trouble, maybe something personal. Not this. Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. "They take girls. Some boys too. No IDs. No history. And once you're gone, you don't come back." Noah's hands curled into fists. "And they were trying to take you?" Lena nodded. "I was supposed to be gone already," she murmured. "Tonight was my last chance." Noah's stomach twisted. He had saved her one stop before she vanished forever. If he hadn't gotten involved, she would have disappeared. And no one would have known. The watchers. Noah leaned back, running a hand down his face. His brain was trying to process everything, but nothing made sense. "How did you escape?" he asked. Lena hesitated again. "I can't," she exhaled sharply. "I just did. And they've been chasing me ever since." Noah could tell she was hiding something. But before he could press further, the diner door opened. A man walked in. Noah felt it instantly, something was off. The guy was in his 40s, dressed casually in jeans and a dark jacket, nothing particularly alarming. But it was the way he moved. The way his eyes flicked across the room too quickly, too knowingly. He wasn't here for food. Noah's stomach clenched. Lena went rigid. "It's him," she whispered. Noah barely had time to react before the man spotted them. His lips curled into a small, satisfied smirk. They had been found. "Run. Now." The man didn't approach right away. He walked to the counter, ordered coffee, sat down at a stool. Casual. Patient. But his eyes, those dark, watchful eyes, never left them. Noah's heart pounded. They weren't safe here anymore. "We need to leave," he muttered. Lena shook her head, her voice trembling. "He's not alone. There's always more." A chill ran down Noah's spine. Lena's hands clenched the table. "They don't chase. They corner." Noah suddenly realized why the man was waiting. Outside, beyond the bright diner lights, in the shadowed street, there were others. Waiting. No escape. Noah's breath came fast. His mind raced. Think, think, think. And then, a flicker of movement. Lena's hand slipped under the table, brushing against his. A silent signal. Her fingers curled slightly. "Trust me." Before Noah could process what was happening, she moved. In one swift motion, Lena grabbed the cup of steaming coffee from the table and flung it over her shoulder. The cup shattered against the counter, scalding liquid splashing everywhere. The man jerked backward, cursing. And in that single moment of chaos, Lena grabbed Noah's hand. "Run!" The next seconds were a blur. Pushing past stunned diners, crashing through the back kitchen, shouts of confusion. Then a metal door. They burst through it, stumbling into a dark alley. The sound of footsteps, fast, heavy, came from behind. They were being hunted. Noah tightened his grip on Lena's hand. No more thinking. No more hesitation. They had to survive. And whatever Lena wasn't telling him, he would find out later. Because right now they were out of time. The alley was tight, the walls pressing in on either side as Noah and Lena sprinted through the darkness. His breath came in short gasps, his heart hammering against his ribs. The sounds of pursuit were close behind, footsteps pounding against pavement, voices barking orders. They were closing in. Lena was ahead of him, her grip tight around his wrist as she led the way. Noah had no idea where they were going, but he trusted her. She had survived this long. She knew how to run. A sharp turn. A fence loomed ahead, tall and rusted. Lena didn't hesitate. She leaped, grabbing onto the metal links, her feet scrambling for a hold. Noah followed, adrenaline surging through him. He climbed fast, feeling the cold metal bite into his fingers. Behind them, the footsteps grew louder. A voice, deep and commanding, shouted, "They're heading towards 7th. Cut them off." Lena reached the top first, swung one leg over, then dropped down. Noah threw himself over just as a figure lunged into the alley behind them. A flash of a gun. A click. Noah didn't stop to think. He let go, landing hard on the other side. Pain shot up his legs, but he didn't slow down. Lena grabbed his hand, pulling him forward. "We have to keep moving." They tore down the alley, darting between dumpsters and old crates, slipping into the shadows as headlights flashed past the street ahead. The city was alive, but it felt like a maze of dead ends. And somewhere out there they were waiting. Nowhere to run, they emerged onto a busier street, breathing hard. Noah's lungs burned. His hoodie clung to him, damp with sweat. Lena scanned the area, her eyes sharp and focused. "We can't go to another train station. They'll be watching." Noah nodded, still catching his breath. "So where do we go?" She hesitated. I don't know." Noah looked around. The street was filled with late-night stragglers, club-goers, night shift workers, the occasional cab. Felt safer. But it wasn't. "They're not just chasing us," Noah realized. "They're hurting us." Lena's face paled. Noah clenched his fists. "Think." Then his eyes landed on something. A parking garage across the street. "Come on." He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward it. They dodged between moving cars, slipping into the dimly lit structure. It smelled of oil and concrete, the air thick with the hum of engines. Rows of parked vehicles stretched before them, offering cover. Noah led Lena between the cars, deeper into the garage. "If we keep moving, we can slip out another exit." Lena nodded, but she was breathing hard, her body tense. Noah didn't like the look in her eyes. She wasn't just scared. She was losing hope. The trap closes. They reached the 3rd level when Noah's phone vibrated. He froze. Slowly, he pulled it out. A new message. "We see you." His stomach dropped. Lena saw it too. Her breath hitched. No, then a sound, a deep, mechanical hum. The elevator doors at the far end of the garage slid open. A man stepped out. Noah recognized him instantly. The same one from the diner. Behind him, 2 others followed. The man's gaze locked onto them, and he smiled. Noah's blood ran cold. "Run," Lena whispered. They turned and sprinted toward the exit, but a black SUV screeched to a stop in front of it. The doors flew open. 2 more men stepped out. Noah skidded to a halt, heart hammering. They were surrounded. No way out. The fight for freedom. Lena's breathing was ragged, her fingers curling into fists. The man from the diner stepped forward, his footsteps calm. "It's over." Lena shook her head, backing up. No, it's not." The man exhaled, almost pitying. "You had a good run, kid. But this ends tonight." Noah's muscles tensed. There had to be a way out. Then, Lena grabbed something from her pocket. A knife. It was small, barely a few inches long, but the way she held it, steady, unshaking, made it clear she wasn't afraid to use it. Noah's eyes widened. Lena had been prepared for this. The man sighed, shaking his head. "Really? A knife?" Lena's grip tightened. "Let us go." The man took a step forward and Lena lunged. The blade flashed in the dim light. The man barely dodged in time, twisting to the side as the knife slashed through empty air. Chaos erupted. The other men rushed forward. Noah reacted. He grabbed a loose tire iron from the ground and swung hard. It connected with one of the men's ribs. The guy grunted, stumbling back. Lena was fighting like a cornered animal, her movements sharp, desperate. But there were too many. A pair of hands grabbed Noah from behind, yanking him backward. He struggled, kicking, twisting, then a gunshot. Everything froze. Noah's breath caught. Lena stood still, the knife in her hand, her chest rising and falling. The man in front of her had a gun raised, the barrel pointed directly at her head. Noah's stomach twisted. The man exhaled, shaking his head. "You just don't quit, do you?" Lena didn't move. Her fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't lower the knife. The man tilted his head. "You know what happens now." Noah's mind raced. If they took Lena, if they took him, they'd be gone. Forever. No. Noah's fingers tightened around the tire iron. Then the distant wail of police sirens. The man cursed. A split second of hesitation. Lena moved. She slammed the knife into his shoulder. The man roared in pain. Noah took his chance. He swung the tire iron, knocking another man off balance. The sirens were getting closer. The men knew it too. The one Lena had stabbed stumbled back, gripping his wound. "This isn't over," he snarled. Then they ran. The SUV's doors slammed shut. The engine roared to life. Then they were gone. A fading nightmare. Noah stood frozen, chest heaving. Lena's hands trembled. The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the pavement. The sirens screamed closer. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then finally, Lena whispered, "We have to go." Noah turned to her, heart pounding. "Lena," she shook her head. "They'll come back. They always do." Her eyes were haunted, empty. Noah's chest ached. "We can go to the police." Lena let out a bitter laugh. "You think they don't already own half of them?" He wanted to argue. Wanted to say that there had to be a way out. But Lena had been running for a long time. And she knew the truth better than he did. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Noah, if you stay with me, you'll never be safe." He swallowed hard. "I don't care." For the first time that night, something flickered in her eyes. Something vulnerable. Then a distant shout. They turned. 2 officers were stepping out of a squad car. Lena backed away. She looked at Noah one last time. Then she ran. Noah's heart clenched. He wanted to follow. Wanted to call out. But she was gone. And for the first time that night, he was the one left behind. Noah stood frozen in the dim parking garage, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing across the concrete. His hands were trembling, his mind racing. She was gone. Lena had vanished into the night, slipping between the cracks like she always had. And Noah? He was standing at the edge of something he didn't fully understand. A world that didn't belong to him. A life that wasn't his to live. Yet he had stepped into it anyway. Now there was no turning back. The aftermath. "Hey, you." Noah's head snapped up. 2 officers approached, their faces hard with suspicion. "Are you hurt?" one of them asked. Noah hesitated. His heart was still pounding, his mind clouded with adrenaline. What was he supposed to say? That he had just been caught in the middle of something bigger than himself? That he had just helped a girl who had spent her entire life running from something he couldn't even begin to comprehend? He swallowed. "No. I'm fine." The officers exchanged a glance. What happened here? Noah's chest tightened. If he told them about Lena, they would chase her. If he lied, they might not let him go. He made a choice. "I don't know," he said. "Some guys tried to jump me. They ran when they heard you coming." The officers eyed him carefully. "You're sure you don't need help?" Noah forced a nod. "Yeah." One of them sighed, rubbing his forehead. "All right. Get home safe, kid." And just like that, they walked away. Noah let out a slow, shaky breath. He was safe. But Lena? Lena was out there, alone. Chasing ghosts. Noah didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her face, those sharp eyes, that haunted look. She had saved him. More than once. Now she was alone again. By the time the sun began to rise, Noah had made up his mind. He wasn't going to let her disappear. He was going to find her. A trail of clues. Noah spent the next 2 weeks chasing shadows. He retraced their steps, asked around discreetly, searched for any sign of her. But Lena was a ghost. No social media. No records. No digital footprint. Nothing. She had erased herself. But Noah refused to give up. Then, one night, something changed. He found a message. The letter. It was tucked inside his locker at school. No one had seen who put it there. No one had noticed anything. But when he opened it, his breath caught. It was a note. "Noah, I told you not to look for me. You don't belong in this world. You were never supposed to. But you saved me. And for that I owe you. So here's what I'll give you, a way out. Forget me. Live your life. Be safe. And if you ever see me again, Walk away. Lena Noah's hands clenched around the paper. Forget her? Walk away? Like none of this ever happened? Like she wasn't out there, still running? His chest ached. He wanted to fight it. Wanted to find her, to tell her she wasn't alone. But deep down, he knew. This was goodbye. The final choice. Noah stood on the edge of the city, staring down at the train station where it had all begun. The same place he had first seen her. The same place he had first noticed the fear in her eyes. She was out there. Somewhere. But she didn't want to be found. And maybe she never would be. Noah exhaled slowly. Then he turned away. Some ghosts aren't meant to be chased. And some people? They're meant to be free. The end.